Hi friends, this is Vishal here with yet another video on Vastu. I would like to know to all my family and friends following my channel that this is basically a channel made for educational purpose. I am learning a course from a very reputed firm known as Vastu Naresh. I am learning it from Bharat Singhal sir. So all these videos are a part of it. So please take the content as per that. Okay. So for today's video, we'll be looking at the date of birth numerology part. It is basically a revision part to the last video uploaded. The same things will be again taken up in this video as per the revision part. So as we look at in the last video, we had seen that numerology or date of birth, there are various types of numerology that are being followed in present time. There is something known as a Pythagorean numerology, there is something known as a Chaldean numerology and the Chinese numerology. What we look at the part for the Vastu part here is the Chinese numerology. Now whenever we look at the Vastu for any person, before knowing the customized Vastu part of it, we should know his or her date of birth. Now something about the Chinese numerology which we should know is that the Chinese numerology is a 4000-year-old numerology practice which was basically invented by the first mythical emperor of China known as Wu of Asai, who was practicing on the banks of Yellow River trying to find out solution for reoccurring floods at that time, who came across a tortoise shell which had a fascinating marking of 3 by 3 grid on it with some other specific markings in that grid, which later on went on to be known as the Loshu square or the Loshu grid as we know in the present time. So basically this Loshu grid talks about the numbers 1 to 9 which falls in this grid, that are the 9 squares that are formed in this grid, and this grid is known as the Loshu grid. Now before going to the Loshu grid part, I would like you all to understand when we study the Vastu of any person. So Vastu is basically nothing but studying the dwelling that they stay or the space that they occupy for a specific thing, maybe the residential part, the commercial part or the industrial part, or the building or the dwelling that is there taken for this purposes. So to understand that dwelling, we first of all look at the proposed plan of whoever has consulted us. So whenever we look at the proposed plan, what we take into consideration are the directions of that plan, specific size and shape of that plan. So understanding the direction, now north, east, south and the west are the 4 basic directions that we first of all look into. Now about the northeast southwest, this term interestingly this term is basically nothing but the news that we all know in the present time. The news channel or the newspaper that we look across has been derived from this specific 4 directions. So now again we'll come up to the northeast southwest part. So when we take any proposed plan, we look at the directions of it, right? So in the previous times when the Vishwakarmas were the communities who were looking into the Vastu part, used to take into account the perfect east of any property and then accordingly would set up all other directions. But in the present time, in the architectural point of view, we take the perfect north and then we take the subsidiary directions, right? So for example, if we say if this is a plot, then the north of it would be on the top, the east, the south and the west in the clockwise direction would follow it. So the north, east, south, west and the subsidiary direction to this main 4 directions would be the northeast, the southeast, the southwest and the northwest. Okay, so basically the 8 directions that we are looking across. Now to further understand these directions, we all know as it is there are 9 planets that are revolving around the earth, right? So from these 9 planets, we'll take into consideration certain planets that rule these directions or these sides, that is northeast, southwest, and the subsidiary sides, that is northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest. Now starting with north, so the ruling planet for north comes out to be Buddh, that is Mercury, right? For east the ruling planet is Sun, that is Surya. For south it is Mangal, that is Mars, and for west it is Shani, that is Saturn. Now similarly for the other four subsidiary directions, the northeast, the ruling planet turns out to be Guru, that is Jupiter. For southeast it is Shukra, that is Venus. For southwest it is Rahu, and similarly for northwest it is Chandrama, that is Moon. So everyone planning to learn Vastu in any form should know these directions and the ruling planets of it, because there are certain properties and attributes of each direction and each planets, right? So if you know which planet is ruling which direction and what are the attributes of its direction would be derived by that planets, right? That we will learn across in the further coming lectures. Now other than this is what we talk about was a proposed plan that we look into. Now when we look into the Loshu grid part of it, the similar sort of a square is formed, which is divided into perfectly 9 parts, that is 3 rows and 3 columns. So 3 by 3, so 9 equal parts of it, right? So whenever we look at the Loshu grid of anything, say if this is a Loshu grid, then there will be a divisional of 3 rows and a divisional of 3 rows and 3 columns, right, forming 9 parts. But the interesting part over here would be wherever we look at a plot, the north was on the top, right? Over here the north falls in the bottom, and similarly in the clockwise manner the east, the south, and the west. So when we consider a Loshu grid, the north comes in the bottom, and in the clockwise manner the east, south, west, and all the subsidiary following directions would be the same: northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest. Okay, so this is something that you should know, where the directions would fall in a proposed plan and where the directions would fall in a Loshu grid. Okay, so Loshu grid basically talks about 9 numbers, from number 1 to number 9 falling in each grid, right? So now there are other than this number, there are specific elements. As we all know, there are 5 elements ruling us, or which with the earth is made up of, or with which we all are made up of, right? So these 5 elements are nothing but fire, water, earth, metal, and wood. Okay, and there is a correlation of each of these numbers to these 5 elements. Now if we go